Welcome back to the Real Estate Brothers podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Christensen.
And I'm the other host, Bridger Christensen.
And today we have with us a very special guest, Jaden Connor. He used to work for one of the biggest wholesaling operations in Utah. Throughout his career, he has transacted millions of dollars of real estate, has been a part of over 600 wholesale deals, and has recently taken the leap and has gone out on his own. So it's an awesome story. Let's maybe go back and kind of start from the beginning of how you got started in real estate. How did you hear about wholesaling? Why did you pick to pursue that? Kind of all those things.
Yeah, so it's funny. It kind of happened in a roundabout way. So I got licensed. I'm a licensed real estate agent as well, and got licensed in 2018. And at the time, I was attending Utah State University, and I was doing door-to-door sales every summer. So I did 3 years of that. And my last summer selling, I was selling pest control in Atlanta. And one of the kids that I was selling with used to work for Jason as a lead manager. And so we got talking about real estate. He knew I was an agent. He knew I was interested on the investment side of things. And so when I got back that summer, that was my last summer, I actually went and took Jason out to lunch, and me and my buddy, because we were like, hey, we should start a wholesaling company. So we took him out to lunch, just the typical, hey, want to pick your brain, get to know you a little bit. And wasn't planning on like working for him or anything like that. And then that was right before my last semester up at Utah State. And so I ended up hitting up Jason after we went to lunch a few weeks there. We actually went to Hug Hess, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Can't get enough, man.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my first time at Hug Hess, and yeah, love that place. But so later on, I ended up hitting him up and was just like, hey, I've got a really light load of classes this last semester. I'd love to just come work for you for free and kind of learn the game. So he brought me on as a lead manager. That lasted for a couple months while I finished school up at Utah State. And then when I graduated, he brought me on full time and created the relationship manager role. And then the rest was history, and spent 5 years there, and just finally got the courage to go out on my own a couple months ago. So
good for you,
awesome,
man.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I feel like that's something, that position, that a lot of people, if you're just starting out or haven't been doing this for a while, at least for us, I feel like that's more of a newer position that's come about within some of the top wholesaling companies. So kind of go over what was a relationship manager? What were your roles?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I think he was the first to do it in Utah. So we kind of just built the role together. But basically he came to me and was just like, hey, like we'd love for you to be a little bit more proactive on the disposition side. Because in wholesaling, we're really proactive on the acquisition side. We're sending out mailers, we're cold calling, we're texting, we're spending a lot of money. We've got acquisition guys that whole thing. But on the disposition side, up until this point, we would kind of just send out an email and kind of just wait for people to kind of come to us when it came to getting a deal sold. So he approached me and was like, hey, I'd love for you to, come on full time as a relationship manager. It'd be a little bit of acquisitions and a little bit of dispositions, but primarily is like building relationships with the investors on the back end and finding out what their buy box is, what their criteria is, what they like, what they don't like, what counties, they're purchasing in, wining and dining them, and then just helping be a little bit more proactive on the disposition side of the wholesaling. So primarily that, and then along with acquisitions through like relationships with other agents and investors. So partnering on deals with other people and wholesaling them together.
That's cool. How many, like maybe percentage wise, what would you say of the deals that you were a part of were from like JV, like joint venturing, from relationships that you had created or, fell into out of the, you guys sent out, still do hundreds, of deals a year. It's like, how many of those were from relationships?
Yeah, it depended on the year. But on average, probably 15% or so were probably
That's
relationship deals. The rest were from our in-house marketing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah. I think it's definitely a role that I feel like a lot of people followed with, because I feel like you said, Jason was like the first person to do it. And then I kept seeing all these other top wholesalers be like, yeah, I'm a relationship manager for this company, for this company. So I feel like he saw a need and filled it. And clearly, I mean, 5 years later, it was a great thing. Right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times like we would sell a deal where that we only had one offer, and the one offer that we had was because I cold called a real estate agent that knew an investor, or cold called an investor that was not necessarily cold calling, right? These are people that are on our list and they want to be buying our deals, but they're not actively checking their email because they're getting blasted by a lot of different wholesalers. It's easy to get caught up, and we're all busy, right? A lot of these investors that are buying these flips are super busy. But because you reached out and proactively was like, hey, this one's right up your alley, can you take a look at it, come to the walkthrough? And then they ended up purchasing it. So, I mean, it happens almost on a weekly basis, really. So yeah, it was really, really smart of Jason to create that role. I mean, it's funny because when he invited me to or gave me that opportunity, he talks about like skating to where the puck is going. He's like, hey, this is where we're headed, and we want to be ahead of the curve here. So yeah, that was kudos to him for kind of seeing that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So we've mentioned Jason a couple times. We've reached out to him to be on, and he will probably within the next couple months.
Sweet.
But to kind of make sure everyone maybe fully understands a little bit more about the operation and totally, exactly what you were a part of. Could you kind of give us a rundown on, I mean, what that looked like? Maybe the team members, kind of what was the flow and how things would work? How big is the team?
What kind of volume?
Also, yeah, I'd say what kind of volume it is, and maybe what your guys' annual revenue was, or what their annual revenue was.
Yeah, absolutely. So last year, 2023 was our best year ever, and we did like 3.7 million in assignment fees. So anywhere from like 120 to 150 plus deals a year. So 3 to 5 a week on average.
That's insane.
And are those all in Utah?
Yeah, all in Utah. I mean, we've done a few in Idaho, but yeah, that's it. Like 99% is in Utah. And in terms of like how it's structured, so Jason is the company owner, and then he's got like a COO, I'd say, kind of runs the show for him. And then there's 3 acquisition managers full time. There's 3 relationship managers, so it was myself and 2 others. And then anywhere from 2 to 4 lead managers, depending on any given time. So they do the cold calling, the texting, the outreach. So a lot of the inbound calls too. They'll answer the phone. And then we've got like a systems manager, a transaction coordinator. I think they're getting ready to bring on another transaction coordinator. So probably about like 20 to 25 employees total. A good amount of like virtual assistants overseas that help with a lot of the back end stuff as well. So it was fun. I mean, I feel super fortunate just to have been able to be a part of it. Really, like there's no way I would have been able to do that volume on my own. And I'll always feel indebted, for the opportunity to be involved in 600 transactions and in a very intimate level. And I mean, every single transaction, you feel like you truly learned something new. Yeah. Like even to this day, like every time I do it, I'm like, oh yeah, like I could implement that, or a different way to structure this deal, or how to negotiate that, But being able to just do that at an extremely high level for the last 5 years was so awesome.
Yeah. So what do you think? And we were kind of talking about this just before this. What do you think would like set you guys apart from other companies? Or I couldn't even imagine having or being a part of a wholesale operation doing 3 to 5 deals a week. That's crazy. We struggle to even do 3 to 5 deals a month, like that's a lot of transactions. There are so many moving parts,
totally.
Closing that many. So what, like how, what did I ask? I'm sorry. I totally blanked.
Well, yeah. What sets us apart?
Yeah. So what, what would set you guys apart, I guess, compared to other people?
It's funny. I'll share a quote. I'll answer that with a quote. There's a guy named Jeff Hoffman. He is a multi-billionaire. He invented like the airport kiosks. Really, really known guy. So Jason is part of a mastermind called Collective Genius, and he actually shared this training with me from Jeff. And one thing that Jeff says is, he says, the world's most successful people are not smarter than you. They just executed better than you. And I feel like that's probably the answer to the question is the execution is just done at a really high level. There's really no magic pill, I don't think. But when you have a team of 20 to 25 people and it's a numbers game, they're putting in a lot of calls, a lot of texts, a lot of emails, also spending a ton of money in marketing every month. But if I had to answer it, I don't know per se. I'm curious how Jason might answer that question if you ask him the same thing. But I would say the systems, the processes, and the execution side of things is kind of where the rubber meets the road, and probably what sets them apart from most other wholesale groups.
Yeah, oh, that's great. I think that's where I feel like the majority of wholesalers struggle. That's where we struggle, is just having the right systems, the right processes, and the right people in place. Because I feel like that's the difference between, doing a couple deals here and there throughout the year to, 3 to 5 a week. Like that kind of volume is just insane.
Yeah.
So, and that's something, because I knew Jason back in would have been 2016 is when I first met him, when he wasn't even doing this. He was working for
Blue Mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, they suck, man. They suck so bad. Anyways, when he was working there, so he was, and I feel like ever since I've known him, he's always been very analytical, very systems driven processes. Like that is how his brain works. And that's perfect for building and overseeing any company, but especially one like this, right? So I think that's huge. And Ethan and I are both visionaries, so we struggle with that. Yeah. But no, I think that's awesome, because
absolutely.
I don't think he would have been able to get there without being the way he is. So
yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Let's shift gears. Let's talk about what are you doing now? How do you like it?
Yeah.
You went from 5 years of probably doing not the same thing, but almost the same thing.
Yeah.
To now you're doing it, but on your own, spreading your wings. How's it feel?
Oh, it feels amazing.
Yeah.
It feels really good. No, so I'm primarily focusing on being a retail real estate agent. So I'm licensed. So doing a lot more on that side of things. Continuing to wholesale. And then I've dabbled a little bit in the hard money space. And so I'm kind of deciding between those three avenues. But the majority of my time is, for sure being like a retail real estate agent. So
that's cool. How are you finding, are these listings that you're finding ones that are coming to you? How are you getting more business that way?
Luckily, everything has been through word of mouth so far. Yeah. So I've been able to close a lot of transactions even in the last couple months since I've quit. And, the other good thing about being a relationship manager is, like, for the last 5 years, like I was paid to just network with people and to just get to know some of the top players in the state. And so, I've been able to get a ton of business from that. Like, I've got, one buddy who's a real estate agent and investor, but he doesn't have the time or energy to be focusing on like listings or buyers. So anytime he gets a deal, he sends it to me. A lot of like friends and family have been helping with transactions. A lot of lenders that send me deals. Like, it's just been a lot of word of mouth, which I prefer, rather than sitting down and cold calling and trying to grind my way into more opportunity. But yeah, it's been awesome.
That's super cool. Along the way, I know you have accumulated some rentals, and I know you were looking at a property of ours a little bit ago, to potentially buy for yourself. And that was, I feel like, one of the first times we really interacted, I
Yeah.
guess, and maybe
Yeah.
at least in person and talked
Right.
a little bit more. And we've chatted since then about your rentals, and you've said that like some of them just cash flow really good. And so I'm curious, like maybe talk about some of those rentals. How did you find them? How did you acquire them? Was it just, put 20% down? Did you get anything subject to or any other creative financing? How many do you have? What are they? Things.
Yeah. So I've got 7, I think, or maybe 6, because we just sold a commercial building in Ogden that I owned with a couple partners. I wanted to hold on to that one personally because it was cash flowing $1,000 a month on a hard money loan.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That's crazy.
And we were sitting on a ton of equity.
Was that the one on Washington?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. But my partners wanted to sell. So, and it was great either way. Like it was still a huge win. So we just sold that one. But every year I've been house hacking. Like that's the best strategy in my opinion to accumulate properties for 5% down or less, So every year I've been able to accumulate one of those. So I've got 3 of those. So basically they're single family with a mother-in-law. So basically duplexes.
Did you add those in the basement, those mother-in-law apartments, or did you buy?
Bottom like that.
Okay.
Yeah, bottom like that. The most recent one that I bought is I had to like reconfigure some walls and get really creative in order to separate the unit. Mm-hmm. Like I think a lot of people would have walked through that property and wouldn't have seen it as 2 units, but that's just what I'm looking for. So I had to move some stuff around that way. And then I own a couple I'll say subject to deals. And then I'm partnered on one in Florida that we're actually selling right now as well. That was an Airbnb.
Oh, nice.
And then that vacant lot up in Driggs.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Nothing crazy. But yeah, I mean, I love right now, like in Utah, it's really hard. Luckily, like my very first house hack, I got like a 2.75% interest rate. And so it cash flows
for sure
like $1,000 a month.
Yeah. It's
doing really well. It's in Sandy. It's in a great area. I loved it. My next one was like 5.75%. I even did an interest rate buy down, so it would have been even more than that. And that one's cash flowing like $700 a month.
It's awesome.
But yeah, in this market today, like it's almost impossible to get stuff to cash flow in Utah unless you do subject to. So this most recent one that I acquired it's 2.789% interest rate, freaking awesome. And then I own another one on a 2.5% interest rate. So
that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty. Seller finance and subject to is almost the only way to make it work.
So how did you find those? Like did you just negotiate the whole thing, structure it? Did you buy from another wholesaler?
Yeah, one of them was just on the MLS.
Cool.
They weren't offering seller finance, but after figuring out what their financial situation was like, I was like, hey, would you guys be open to this? And they were. Yeah. And then the other one was brought to me from another real estate agent, actually. Cool. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, when you have done those, what's a down payment kind of looked like with those? Do you have any partners on any of these? Or are they all?
I've got partners on one of them.
Okay.
I don't like to do a deal unless it's like 10% or less down. There's exceptions to everything, but especially with subject to, because there's the risk of the due on sell clause. Yep. And if you're into it more than 10% down and the note gets triggered, like you could be put in a really bad spot.
Yeah.
I don't think that would ever happen. I mean, but it could, right? So that's just like my rule of thumb. So both of those one of them was actually a little over 10%, but it was a cheaper entry price. So I was okay with it. And that's the one that I partnered on too. So we split the down payment. Yeah. But the other one, it was like ended up being like 7% down, which is great. Cause like if I would have went and got a traditional loan, I would have had to put 5% down anyway. Yeah. So you're just putting like a little bit more down, but you're getting a 2.789% rate instead of a 6.5%, 7% rate,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of my rule of thumb. But
are both of those the sub twos that you have? Are both of those you're keeping them for the life of the loan? Do you have a balloon? Like what? For those who don't understand, subject to is when you take over somebody else's mortgage. So you buy the property, you own it, but the debt is technically still in the previous owner's name, right? And that way you're able to keep their interest rate in place, their payment amount in place. So then it makes sense. So
Yeah.
what does that look like?
On one of them, there's no balloon. So we just inherited it for the rest of the loan, which is awesome. And then on the most recent one, that's actually the one that I'm living in right now. That one has a 3-year balloon, which I don't love.
Yeah, that's quick.
But when you have a 2.789% rate, like you're getting a lot of principal pay down. So I was actually just looking at the numbers the other day. I'm getting, 12 to 15 plus thousand of principal pay down every year.
That's great.
So I just ran the numbers and was like, okay, by year 3, I either have to refinance or sell. And worst case scenario, I'm going to owe this in year 3. At the end of year 3, I'm going to owe this, which will be a lot less than what I currently owe. And as long as I can refinance or sell at this, it'll make sense. And we remodeled it and everything too. So just look at it a few different ways. But I personally would like to be at a minimum of a 5-year balloon on anything. Anything less than that is a little scary. But because we love the home and we were owner occupying it, I still feel good about it.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've always, I don't know if I've ever talked to somebody personally who owns a property sub 2 that they're currently living in. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's always that like thought in the back of your head. It's like, man, what if, you know? But I mean, there's ways to avoid that and
totally
things to do to ensure that it, even if it does happen, you have the best outcome. So
right. The funny thing is, I actually, it would have been a better financial decision not to live in this one because it's 2 units. It's a big, nice house in West Bountiful. And I put a lot of money into it to remodel it. And it would have been better for me to just, it was in great shape, but me and my wife just wanted it. We were just, because we were going to be living in it, we spent a little bit more than when we needed to, if it was just going to be a rental. And so the better decision for me would have been to rent it out as 2 separate units, not live in it. And it would have cash flowed really well. And I wouldn't have had to spend all the money on the remodel, but it was more of like a lifestyle decision for us.
yeah,
Totally.
And we loved the location. We loved the property. And so we decided to do it, and it's been great.
Cool.
So.
Good for you. No, that's awesome.
What do you think were some of like the biggest lessons that you learned working? What's the company name? What did you work on?
Oh man, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, because I feel like you go in, you just did some sales.
Oh wait, are you talking about with Jason?
Yeah.
Yes, I know
Yeah.
he has like
what's
4.
when we get an email from him, what's the company?
Wholesale Utah Homes.
That's
Okay.
what it is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you were doing a little bit of door to door before working with them. Like I feel like, I mean, I didn't know you beforehand, but I mean, you're very smart. You're very sophisticated. You've accomplished a ton. I would imagine you are probably a totally different person than when you first,
Definitely.
in some regards at least.
Definitely.
So what do you think were some of like the biggest lessons you learned or personality traits that you saw you had to develop to be successful and to be able to perform? And that, ones that you're just going to keep growing.
Yeah, definitely learned, a ton of things that'll just stay with me forever. Like the last 5 years have truly played a huge impact and shaped me into who I am today as like an investor and a real estate agent. So, one thing that comes to my mind is like your network is your net worth. And it's all about who you know, and relationships are everything. And it pays to have like good mentors, right? Like a lot of those properties that I've acquired, like even those subject to ones, right? The seller finance deals, I don't even know if I would have known how to structure those if I hadn't have been at that company, right? But like because I was surrounded by like a lot of investors that were doing deals at a really high level, it makes it easier for you to go and replicate that and do it.
Totally.
And so, yeah, your network is your net worth. That's like a key, a key principle that I feel like I've learned. As well as just like the importance of surrounding yourself. Like, there's another quote people say all the time, like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like just be really conscious about who you're spending your time with, who you're networking with. where you put your energy in. And then, yeah, I'd say, I mean, again, I could probably go on all day about things that I learned while there, but, you know, another thing that comes to my mind is just like the importance of like the systems, the processes, the execution. And then I'll finish off with like not being afraid to pay to play. So I've over the last more recently, over the last 3 years, I've paid money to be a part of certain programs, or to be like, I just spent $6,000 to go spend a weekend up with Chandler David Smith. Do you guys know him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw he was doing that.
And like, it feels so counterintuitive in me to like spend $6,000 to go spend a weekend with him and 15 other people.
Yeah.
And like, it kind of hurts a little bit, right? Because like, that's a good chunk of change.
Yeah.
And the old me, like, I never would have done that ever.
Yeah.
But every single time, like, whether it's through, like, I'm a coach for real estate investing school too, right? And I had to pay to be a part of that program. And then I eventually became a coach and get a lot of business from that too. Every single time I've invested in myself and I've paid to play, like, the return always comes back for sure. So that's another one that's kind of counterintuitive to me that I feel like I would like to continue to adopt and implement moving forward, even though can be tricky sometimes.
For sure. No, and I feel like just over the last 2 or 3 years for us is when we really started making a push for joining masterminds, or, you know, paying for groups, and, you know, paying for higher ticket courses and things like that. And I feel like every time we do it, we either learn something, or we meet people, or in some way, shape, or form, it always comes back tenfold.
Definitely.
So yeah, but that's something that we've talked about where it's like, oh
yeah,
man, like,
it hurts.
It's a lot of money, but then it's like you're surrounding yourself with, you know, people who you should be around, right? And a lot of times they're not just in your neighborhood,
right,
you know, or even in your local community. Like, you're going out of state for that, right? And so,
right.
And I know that there's some bigger players up there in Idaho too who are doing really well, and you probably wouldn't cross paths with them unless you paid to go to this event, right? So that happens all the time. And I feel like that's something that I feel like if you're new to real estate, you're kind of like, oh, that's that guru, you know, like somebody selling another course, somebody selling another event, whatever. But those who have actually gone, they're not the ones who are saying that. They're the ones who are like, no, you should come next time, right?
Yeah.
So,
and for me personally, because
then you get to write it off, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's
why
a business
not?
write-off. Yeah. For me personally, like, there is still a lot of that guru stuff out there that you do need to be careful of, for sure. For me personally, like, the way that I evaluate it is like, who am I going to meet while I'm there? Yeah. Like, for that weekend example, if I'm in the room with 15 other people that also paid $6,000, they're probably going to be pretty high level people. And even if I just meet one person that I can do, it's not all about like the monetary return. There's other returns, like the education and the experience and things like that. But looking at it from like a monetary aspect, if I just meet one person there that I do one deal with, it'll for sure make up for that, you know?
Yeah, I went to Recon, I think it was just yesterday, and Michael Burns was presenting. Big flipper, super successful guy. And he said that in his career, his biggest regret was not joining it's not a Arete Syndicate. I think it's a big
Ed Milet and Andy Frisella.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But I think there's different tiers, but the one that he did was $70,000 a year.
Wow.
And I think you have to apply and get approved. I think you have to I don't know what it is, but he had just mentioned that he applied once, got approved, and then he didn't do it. He's like, that was 70 grand. Like, that's a lot of money.
I'm not at that level.
No, right? He's like, that's crazy.
That's
like,
a lot.
You know, but so then he didn't do it. And then he applied the next year and he got accepted again. Then he did it. And he's like, he's flipped over, what did he say?
It's like 400 homes.
400 or 500 houses or something like that. Like, he's done a ton. And he had said that hands down, one of the most impactful things he's done is joining that group. And his biggest regret was not joining it sooner.
Wow.
And to your point, that's exactly what he said. He's like, because the more you have to pay to be in a room, that means the more everyone else had to pay, obviously, to be there. And so when you're sitting in there and you're with these 15 or however many other people, they each just had to pay $6,000 to be there.
Yeah.
And in this case, they each had to pay 70 grand to be there.
Yeah.
And so you're working with some serious people, some people who mean business. So yeah, you do have to you got to pay to play, So sometimes you do need to pay to be in the right rooms, and that's just, it is what it is. So
well, and along with that too, Todd Peterson, the guy that took Vivint public, right? Had a huge exit. He always talks about like dreaming bigger, faster. And Brody Fawcett, guy that I know really well, part of real estate investing school, he has a mastermind called Dreaming Bigger, Faster. And I think that's super important too, right? Like, don't be afraid to like kind of to Michael Burns' point, like he wished he would have just done that sooner. I think we could all probably look back and say, man, I wish I would have thought bigger. Even to this day, I'm sure 5 years from now, I'll look back in my shoes right now and be like, man, I was thinking too small.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like I need to just, shoot a little bigger and dream 100%. A little bigger.
So here we were one day, scroll back a couple of years, scrolling through Facebook, and I saw in one of the investor groups that you posted about this huge deal in Driggs, Idaho that you were working. 60 some odd lots. How many acres was it?
I think it was like around 100 acres.
That's crazy. So 100 acres.
That's awesome.
Super cool. And I know we obviously talked about it at lunch, but that was super cool to see. Like, wow, like Jaden, like, holy crap, this is a
He's
huge
got his big
deal.
boy pants
like,
on
big boy
right
pants
now.
are on doing this deal. And it's looked like, and as we now know, it's turned out to just be an awesome deal, super unique, lots of lessons learned, and super cool points that you emphasized to us. So let's revisit that, and talk about it, because super cool deal again, and I'm sure everyone will gain something from it.
Yeah, that was a fun one. So, I played a small part in that one. My brother and his business partner went under contract on a $5 million land acquisition, vacant land up in Driggs, Idaho. At the time, I had never even heard of Driggs, Idaho. And me being in the space, my brother approaches me and he's like, hey, what are your thoughts on this deal? You should help us raise the $5 million to acquire it. Mm-hmm. And it was September of 2022. And if anyone was in the market in September of 2022, interest rates were starting to creep up. And the market was just slowing down like crazy.
I'm getting anxiety just thinking about the end of 2022.
Yeah, that was a rough time.
The worst time.
A lot of people. And so being in the space, like I was feeling that, right? I could feel the market slowing down. And so when he approached me, I'm like, dude, I wouldn't touch this deal with a 10-foot pole. Like, I don't know, man. Like that's risky. Like especially new construction, vacant raw land, especially. And
so they hadn't got it subdivided or anything.
Was it parceled previously though?
The crazy thing is, when we closed on the land, it was completely ready to go. Lots were ready to be sold as is. So everything we needed no horizontal work. We needed no curb and gutter. We needed no anything. Yeah,
That's
was
great.
ready lots were ready to sell. So that was good. But still, so anyway, they had at least a few weeks to a month of due diligence. And so during this time, about a week or two later, after I was like, I don't know, I spent some time looking into it. And me and my brother, we always laugh about this because we were texting back and forth, and I was just like, dude, like it just clicked for me because I was looking at Zillow and what lots could sell for. It was a 64 lot parcel, so there's 30 1-acre lots, 30 half-acre lots, and then 4 1.5-acre lots, and all of them were single family except for the 4 1.5-acre parcels. Those were multifamily. And just started going through the numbers and looking at what lots were selling for up there. And I'm like, dude, like you would literally only need to sell 20 to 25 of these to pay back the $5 million. And like, even if the deal goes south, like even if you're only left with like 5 lots left over, like even if it takes you 59 lots to make up the $5 million, it's still going to be worth it because those 5 lots will be worth, over $1 million.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was on board, and we went full speed ahead. I ended up connecting them with a hard money lender that gave us 100% of the acquisition, the full $5 million. I think we had to come to the table with like closing costs or something, which was like $50,000. So like 1% of the purchase price, which was crazy.
Awesome.
Like we got,
those are very good terms.
It's hard to find hard money lenders. There's not very many hard money lenders around that'll give you 100% of a $5 million land acquisition in September of 2022.
But we do know of one.
But we do know of one. Yes. So yeah, they ended up selling around 20 to 25 lots off to pay back the $5 million over like a year period. We ended up refinancing into a different hard money loan. But now they're sitting on over $5 million worth of assets that they own free and clear. And then they just gave me a finder's fee and then a 1 acre lot as part of helping them. So we're getting ready to break ground on luxury cabin up there to Airbnb. And they've just been building a bunch of specs and stuff. So it turned into like this massive, really cool, exciting deal. And it's been fun to like cheer my brother on from the sidelines, and kind of be involved a little bit.
Yeah. You had mentioned, there's been a couple times where we have bought some properties or like our office building, bigger, like that acquisition was like 765. And then thinking about paying, I'm paying over $7,000 a month in interest.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot, like it's a little nerve wracking, but I couldn't imagine that on a $5 million loan.
Yeah.
And
dude, I didn't even think about that.
yeah, that's a lot.
It's 50 bands.
50 grand a month.
Yeah. In interest alone.
Yeah.
And just interest.
Yeah.
And
we paid.
Let me take note. That's where I need to take my business.
I forgot to tell you guys this, but over that 6-month period, with the original lender, we paid over $600,000 in points and interest.
What a place to be in.
Dude, that's awesome. For him.
Yeah, not you.
Not you.
Definitely not you.
Not you.
But for him.
Okay, so you had mentioned that right there, that you had to switch hard money lenders. The first one had a 6-month term and was super set on that. And so meaning, what some people may not realize with hard money loans is, well, when they come due, they're due. And if you don't pay it back, or you can't, or you in a certain time frame, whatever it is, well, they foreclose. It's a legit foreclosure and they take it back. And sometimes I would imagine on a purchase of that size, they're going to make you sign personal guarantees and all those sorts of things to where they'll take your house. It's no joke.
Yep.
So on this one, again, that was coming due. And so there were some things that needed to be figured out, maybe in agreement with a handful of other stuff. There's lots of different nuances that go into hard money loans, but the interest rate rose a few months in. And so now you're really needing to find, a new lender. You end up finding one that gives you a year loan, and then you guys are able to do it there. But one thing that you had mentioned was you were like, I feel like if there was anyone else doing this deal, that they would have got foreclosed on. And that just goes to show the tenacity, the drive, and the, go get 'em attitude that your brother and his business partner had. And that in business, you have to, they're not getting $5 million of equity easily. Yeah. Right. I mean, on the verge of getting, foreclosed on and other things that were super scary. And from how, you described it. So I think that's also super important. Like, we can brush over it and it's like, wow, all they got to do is find a lot, do this. Yeah. Okay, I can go talk to that same guy. I'll message him, find out who it is. I'll go get the $5 million. I'll do that. And then I'll go get, as soon as you said that, I was thinking that. I'm like, I'm in Driggs now, or I'm going to,
let's go. Sign me up.
But it is not that easy. Right. Paying over $2,500 a day in interest or whatever you had said. So it's like, there's a lot more that goes into these types of deals than what maybe is discussed afterwards.
Definitely.
Or maybe not fully realized. So kudos to them and you for never giving up and not stopping and just no matter what happens, there's no going back, burn the boats,
Yeah. No, that definitely saved them. I mean, their backs were up against the wall multiple times in that deal. And it could have gone south multiple times. Like it was bad. And to take that a step further, so to give you perspective, like we had to sell 20 or so lots in a 6-month period, which makes up a good portion of all the vacant lot sales in that entire county up there. Like it's, which is tough to do. Like typically it's normal for lots to sit for a year on the market before they even sell. Like that's just normal. And so it was tough. I mean, luckily we were able to sell them at a discount and things like that. But to put it into perspective, they had a realtor that was helping them, a licensed real estate agent, that they listed multiple lots for sale up there. And of the first 20 or so lots that we sold to pay back the $5 million in debt, I don't think a single one of those lots sold from the MLS from a realtor, which was the original plan. Like the original plan was, hey, we'll just list these and we'll sell them. Right. Yeah. And so it goes to show like they had to grind and call like builders and realtors and they reposted Facebook Marketplace every single day in KSL. Like,
dude, I kept seeing it. I was like, man, I was like, this looks pretty cool.
And he was getting a lot of hate for that because like it is annoying, right? When you're constantly getting reposted every week.
Who cares?
But he's like, he found like 2 or 3 buyers from that, which is equated to like $800K worth of sales. And it's like, I don't give a crap what you are saying to me.
100%. Absolutely.
But anyway, I just wanted to share that because like, yeah, I mean, no one's coming to save you. Like it's easy to think like, oh, I'll just do this or this, but no one's coming to save you. And if you can just put in the work, like you'll see the results, and it might not always be pretty. But yeah, that's how you get the results. So
that's cool, man. Yeah, I feel like those deals are awesome. I'm like, when you hear about something like that, like I hope everybody's getting fired up because I'm like, that makes us, we're driving over to the office. I'm like, man, maybe Driggs is the spot, like, because, you hear something like that and that's not common, right? But it just goes to show like what's out there. And I feel like one of my biggest takeaways from this is you from the story is you make your money when you buy. Like you don't make your money when you sell. And I feel like that's a concept that not a lot of people understand. But in this situation, they bought right. You guys bought right. 5 million, like if you would have bought higher, who knows what would have happened. So I feel like whenever you're going into any real estate transaction, you make your money when you buy. Yeah. And I'm like, if you can just get that through your head and like stick to that, I'm like, you can't lose. So I think that's awesome. If taking that whole experience, what's the biggest thing you learned from it? Like one takeaway, the biggest one.
Yeah, honestly, kind of just like the just keep going, right? Like the tenacity behind it. So we can't even tell you how many hard money lenders we hit up before this guy was like, yeah, I'll do it at 100% financing. Do you want to know how many people told us no before that? Almost every hard money lender in Utah and Idaho, right?
Yep.
And so it would have been easy for us to give up, be like, oh, well, like if nobody's willing to lend on it, it's just not a deal. Like we easily could have talked ourselves out of it. So just the importance of like going, and then obviously I shared the example of, okay, now that it's funded, we got to sell lots.
Yeah.
And none of them are selling on the MLS. So we got to get selling lots on our own. So they direct to builder sold basically like 25 lots and got creative in a couple different ways as well. So I'd say that's number one. And then number two for me, that's worth mentioning as well is don't be afraid to take risk. So I had the benefit of sitting on the sidelines a little bit. Like I helped with getting it funded and everything. I didn't personally guarantee the loan. My name wasn't on it. Yeah. If I had to personally guarantee the loan, I don't think I would have done it. Yeah. Because I'm very conservative and I can talk myself out of any deal. But seeing my brother and his business partner just take on this absolute massive amount of risk, and they've got kids. I don't have any kids yet. They've got like families to support. They've got their houses. They're well established. Like they've got a lot to lose. Like if this deal goes south, whereas me, like I probably should have been the one personally guaranteeing the loan because I don't have as much risk personally.
Yeah, sure.
And so the other takeaway for me is like, don't be afraid to take risk. And I think I need to be a little bit more risky. I'm not saying just be dumb, right? Like you want to take asymmetrical risk where the upside is way bigger than the potential downside. and you want to do your due diligence and everything. But that's another key takeaway for me as well.
Well, I think to your point, like when you say you wouldn't personally guarantee that loan, like it's not your realm. Like development's not your realm right now, at least. And so jumping from, I mean, I don't know if you've really done any development now, to being like, yeah, I'm going to go be a part of this huge project and personally guarantee it. Like it makes all the sense in the world to not do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I totally get that. Like we were super out of our comfort zone buying this office building that we did, where that acquisition was $765. Rents at the time were like somewhere between, maybe I think somewhere around $7,000 a month.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a good deal. And so rents are now at just over 16,000. Yeah, so it's like 16.5. So like super good.
That's insane.
It's our only claim to fame.
It is. I know.
That is insane.
Yeah, it is a good deal. Idaho's been kind of interesting to learn more about, like their appraisal process and other things that we didn't really know beforehand. But this is our first time really dealing with like cap rates and other things like that. Like, this isn't just a single family house. This is a almost 40,000 square foot building. And we didn't know what we were doing, brought on a partner, Matt Strong, couldn't have done it without him. So we do still technically have hard money on it as well. I think by the end of like next month, we'll owe like $950, I think is where our balance will be. But we are right now in the middle of refinancing because we just signed a really good tenant. And we're anticipating an appraisal of somewhere of like maybe 1.6 to 1.8. It definitely could be more if it was maybe closer to like a main road or a little bit better of an area.
A little more occupied.
But still a fantastic deal. We're in it zero money. We don't have a penny in the deal, and we own 66%.
That's amazing.
And so, I mean, one of the tenants just expressed interest in buying it. And so like if we were to sell it and it appraised for 1.7, we'd make 500,000.
Wow.
And that's pretty cool. And
That's
not
amazing.
having a dollar in the
Yeah.
deal. Or if it appraises for that and we refinance, we'll be able to pull out however much money. So gotta take risk. And that was so out of our realm, you know what I mean? But we interacted with someone who knew what they were doing and they helped us out along the way. And on this one, it might have been a little bit easier because it was pretty obvious how good of a deal it was.
Yeah.
Like, right. It wasn't 100 acres somewhere,
But still, yeah. And then on the next one, it's just a little bit easier. It feels
for sure.
like risk is such a funny thing in general because 5 years ago, even like I've done some flips, right? I've bought rentals. Like the me 5 years ago would have been like, that's risky.
Yeah.
But the me today is like, doesn't feel risky at all because I know what I'm doing and I feel a little bit more experienced. Obviously there's always an element of risk, right? But it's just funny how like your perception of what is risky can change
Totally.
and your appetite for it.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like people have made the analogy of risk being like a muscle. The more you flex it, the easier it becomes. And, the more you grow, the bigger the risk, the more you grow. So I think that's spot on. Because same here, what we were doing 5 years ago when we first started, or 6 years ago, I'm like, man, looking forward, I'm like, to where we're at now, I'm like, dude, that would be crazy trying to comprehend that back then.
Yeah.
So
the
more you learn, the more you grow.
Yeah.
For sure.
That.
Well, dude, it's been great having you here. We always ask for a few book or podcast recommendations. What have been some of the best books that you've read or that you'd recommend, whether real estate related or not, or podcasts?
Yeah. So, I love books and podcasts. I feel like every time I'm in the car that I just listen to podcasts or audible books or things like that. But, I'll start with books. So probably one of my all-time favorites for sure, top 3 is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I just feel like every person needs to read that book because we love to point fingers of blame at other people, but he just talks about the importance of like taking ownership and everything that happens to you is your fault, basically.
For sure.
Which empowers you rather than saying, oh, it was you know, this or outside circumstances, yada, yada, yada. But that's a good one. Just the classics, right? Like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I really like a book. This probably doesn't get recommended a ton, but Unshakable by Tony Robbins just talks a lot about like finances and things like that. That's a really good one. And then Darren Hardy's book. I can't remember the title of it, but Darren Hardy has a really awesome book about like habits and things like that. That's really good. And then in terms of podcasts, I love Casey Baugh's podcast. He's local to Utah. He's a Vivint guy. Just brings on amazing guests. I've spent a ton of time listening to Bigger Pockets podcast. I know they recently are going through a change, so it'll be curious to
I
see
saw that. I was like,
Yeah.
all right,
how that
shots
happens.
fired, man.
Yeah. Yeah. But speaking of Bigger Pockets podcast, another good one is like Brandon Turner's new podcast.
Mhm.
I can't remember what it's titled, but after he left Bigger Pockets, he started his own. That's a good one. And then another one of my favorites is Ed Milet's podcast. That's it's really
classic.
good as well. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Those are some of my favorites.
Yeah. No, I Extreme Ownership, that's been one that I've been wanting to read for a long time.
Yeah, you should.
And I've been blaming all my circumstances for not reading it.
Exactly.
No, that's awesome.
Exactly.
Well, we appreciate you coming on here and taking the time.
Yeah.
Any last words, any words of encouragement to anybody who's looking to get into real estate in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just leave with saying, you know, number one, find a mentor. It's like if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, like reach out to you guys, you know, reach out to me. Like there's a lot of people happy to help. So get connected with people that are in the space. And then I mean, just keep it up. Like it's the long game. It's not a get rich quick scheme.
For sure.
But real estate's my favorite asset class for sure. And there's a lot of fun aspects and avenues of it. So
For sure. How can people find you on social medias, or what's the best way to get a hold of you?
the best way to reach me is probably just through my Instagram. So just Jaden, Jaden Con, Jaden Con. Yeah,
Cool.
You can find me there. That's where I'm probably the most active on.
Sweet.
Yep.
Well, we appreciate having you on here. It's been awesome. And we will see you guys next time.
See ya.
So, yeah.